"Stand up, Mr. Johnson," she commanded, her voice deadly quiet. The ruler struck his back with a sharp crack. Pain radiated across his shoulders. What happens when an elite principal accidentally discovers his driver's son solving complex equations that even university professors struggle with? What dark secret was this brilliant young black student hiding from his parents? When Dr. Wellington enters room 307 that fateful afternoon, he has no idea his entire worldview is about to be shattered. The discovery of Elijah's mathematical genius will expose the ugly truth behind Westfield Academy's prestigious facade and trigger a revolution that nobody could have predicted. Don't miss this powerful story of injustice, vindication, and transformation. Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now, subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. The silver Lexus rolled to a stop in front of the imposing brick facade of Westfield Academy. Marcus Johnson adjusted his chauffeur's cap and glanced in the rearview mirror. "We've arrived, Dr. Wellington." Dr. Richard Wellington, principal of Westfield Academy, gathered his leather briefcase without looking up from his phone. "Thank you, Marcus. I'll be working late tonight. Pick me up at 7. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied respectfully, watching as his employer strode through the grand entrance doors, greeted by deferential nods from staff members. Marcus had been Dr. Wellington's driver for nearly 5 years. The job paid well enough to keep his family in a modest home on the edge of a decent neighborhood, even if it was worlds away from the mansions that housed Westfield students. Driving back to his neighborhood, Marcus's thoughts turned to his son. Elijah was 15, rail-thin with bright eyes that seemed to notice everything. While other parents worried about their teenagers getting into trouble, Marcus's concern was different. Elijah was too quiet, too absorbed in his notebooks filled with numbers and symbols Marcus couldn't begin to understand. When Marcus arrived home, he found Elijah exactly where he expected, hunched over the kitchen table, surrounded by books from the public library. "Hey, son," Marcus said, setting down his keys. Elijah looked up, his face brightening. "Dad. Perfect timing. Can I show you something?" Before Marcus could answer, Elijah was already flipping through pages of calculations. "I've been working on this problem for 3 days, and I finally figured it out. It's a differential equation that describes the motion of multiple bodies affected by gravity." Marcus nodded, pride mixing with confusion. His son's intelligence had always seemed like a miracle, and a mystery. Neither he nor his wife Lisa had finished college. They'd noticed Elijah was different when he was just 3, organizing his blocks by prime numbers before he could even name them. "That's great, son," Marcus said, wishing he understood more. "Your mom working tonight?" "Yeah, double shift at the hospital. She left dinner in the fridge." Marcus watched as Elijah returned to his equations, fingers moving across the page with certainty and purpose. He wondered, not for the first time, what his son might achieve if given the right opportunities that seemed reserved for the children of people like Dr. Wellington, not the son of a driver and a nurse's aide. Later that night, after Elijah had gone to bed, Marcus sat at the kitchen table, looking through his son's notebooks. The pages were filled with equations and diagrams that might as well have been written in another language. But one thing was clear, this was beyond ordinary talent. Marcus thought about Westfield Academy, with its advanced curriculum, renowned teachers, and resources his son could only dream of. The tuition was more than he made in a year. But maybe, just maybe, there could be another way. One day, Marcus whispered to himself, carefully closing the notebook. "One day, the world will know what you can do." He didn't realize that one day would come sooner than he ever imagined. The Johnson family home sat at the end of Maple Street, a modest 2-bedroom bungalow with peeling paint and a small front yard that Lisa Reynolds Johnson kept meticulously planted with flowers. It wasn't much compared to the homes Marcus drove past daily while chauffeuring Dr. Wellington, but they had made it a haven. Elijah. Breakfast. Mrs. Reynolds called early Saturday morning. The smell of pancakes wafted through the small house. Elijah emerged from his room, already dressed despite the early hour. At 15, he was tall for his age but painfully thin, with deep brown skin that contrasted with his bright, intelligent eyes. "Morning, Mom," he said, taking his place at the table where his father already sat with coffee. "I was thinking," Marcus began cautiously, "maybe you could come with me to work today. Dr. Wellington's attending a conference, so I'll just be waiting in the car. You could bring your books." Elijah's eyes lit up. "Really? I could see Westfield Academy?" Marcus and Lisa exchanged a glance. They'd been careful not to encourage dreams that seemed impossible to fulfill. "Just from the outside," Marcus clarified. "But their grounds are beautiful. You might enjoy the change of scenery for your studies." What Marcus didn't say was that he wanted Dr. Wellington to catch a glimpse of his son, to see what Marcus saw every day, a brilliant mind trapped by circumstance. After breakfast, Elijah gathered his notebooks and textbooks. Most were secondhand, their margins already filled with another student's notes that Elijah had meticulously corrected in his precise handwriting. "Do you think they have a real observatory?" Elijah asked as they drove toward Westfield. "I read that some private schools have their own telescopes." "They have everything, son," Marcus replied, his voice a mixture of awe and bitterness. "Tennis courts, a theater, science labs with equipment that would make your public school teachers weep." As they approached the school gates, Elijah pressed his face against the window. The campus sprawled across 30 acres, its buildings a harmonious blend of modern architecture and classical design. "It's like a palace," he whispered. Marcus parked in his usual spot, far enough from the main entrance to be unobtrusive. "I'll be right here. You can sit in the back seat if you want more room for your books." For hours Elijah worked contentedly, occasionally looking up to watch students in their crisp uniforms moving between buildings. They looked like characters from another world, confident, entitled, their future secure. When Dr. Wellington emerged from his conference, Marcus quickly motioned for Elijah to stay down. "Who's that?" Elijah whispered, peering through the window. "Dr. Wellington, the principal," Marcus replied as he stepped out to open the car door. "Productive meeting, sir?" Marcus asked as Dr. Wellington settled into the back seat. "Quite," the principal replied absently, focused on his phone. On the drive back, Elijah remained silent in the front passenger seat, but his mind was racing. He'd seen the mathematical equations on a whiteboard through an open classroom window, equations he'd already mastered from library books. That night, when they returned home, Lisa found Elijah more animated than she'd seen him in months. "Mom, they have everything there," he exclaimed. "And their math classes, I saw what they're learning. I could do that work, Mom. I know I could." Lisa sat beside him, her nurse's aide uniform still on after her long shift. "I know you could too, baby. You're smarter than all of them put together." She didn't have the heart to remind him of the insurmountable barriers, the tuition they could never afford, the social connections they didn't have, the unspoken rules that kept families like theirs on the outside. Later, after Elijah had gone to bed, she found Marcus sitting at the kitchen table, rubbing his temples. "He's been talking about that school all evening," she said softly. Marcus looked up, his expression resolute. "I'm going to ask Dr. Wellington. About a scholarship, maybe. There has to be a way." Lisa sighed. "Marcus, people like us don't get favors from people like them." "Maybe not," Marcus replied. "But our son deserves a chance. And I'm going to try to get him one." Monday morning arrived with a steady downpour that matched Marcus's mood. He'd spent the weekend rehearsing what he would say to Dr. Wellington, but every approach seemed doomed to failure. Why would the prestigious principal of Westfield Academy care about his driver's son? "You're quiet today, Marcus," Dr. Wellington observed as they crawled through morning traffic. Marcus took a deep breath. It was now or never. "Dr. Wellington, may I speak with you about something personal?" The principal lowered his newspaper slightly. "Of course. It's about my son, Elijah. He's 15, and he's exceptional with mathematics. Self-taught, mostly. I was wondering if Westfield might have any scholarship programs for students like him. There was a long silence, and Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Marcus, Westfield scholarships are extremely competitive, Dr. Wellington finally replied. We receive hundreds of applications from students with perfect GPAs, prestigious competition wins, and recommendation letters from influential figures. I understand, sir, Marcus said, his hope deflating. I just thought. However, Dr. Wellington continued, surprising him, we do have a service scholarship program. One student per year from a service worker's family can attend tuition-free if they maintain excellent grades. It hasn't been awarded yet for the coming semester. Marcus nearly missed a traffic light. Are you serious, sir? Entirely. It would require an entrance exam, of course. And I should warn you, Westfield standards are exceptionally high. Elijah would exceed any standard you set, Marcus said with quiet confidence. I stake my reputation on it. Dr. Wellington raised an eyebrow. That's quite a statement. I'll have the application materials sent to your home. The exam is next Friday. When Marcus told his family that night, reactions were mixed. Lisa was cautiously optimistic, but worried. Marcus, have you thought about what it would be like for him there? Those children come from money. Their parents are CEOs and politicians. And our son is smarter than all of them, Marcus countered. Elijah, for his part, was simultaneously terrified and exhilarated. What if I'm not good enough? He asked, pacing their small living room. You are, his father assured him. You just need to show them what you've shown us all along. The next week passed in a blur of preparation. Elijah threw himself into studying, though his parents worried he was pushing himself too hard. Marcus brought home practice tests that Dr. Wellington had provided, and Lisa took fewer shifts to help quiz their son. On the morning of the exam, the Johnson family arrived at Westfield Academy an hour early. Elijah wore his best clothes, a button-up shirt and khaki pants that had been carefully ironed by his mother. Remember, Marcus said as they walked toward the administration building, you belong here just as much as anyone else. Dr. Wellington met them personally, something Lisa hadn't expected. He was tall, with silver-streaked hair and the confident bearing of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. You must be Elijah, he said, extending his hand. I've heard you have quite a gift for mathematics. Yes, sir, Elijah replied, his voice steady despite his nerves. Well, we'll see about that, Dr. Wellington said, not unkindly. The exam will take 3 hours. It covers mathematics, science, literature, and history. As they led Elijah to the testing room, Lisa whispered to Marcus, did you see how he looked at our son? Like he was some kind of curiosity. It doesn't matter, Marcus replied. All that matters is that Elijah gets his chance. 3 hours later, Elijah emerged, looking drained but quietly confident. How was it? His mother asked anxiously. The math was easy, Elijah said. The history was harder, but I think I did okay. Dr. Wellington appeared a moment later, his expression unreadable. We'll have the results processed by Monday. I must say, Elijah, your mathematics answers were interesting. Very unconventional approaches. But correct? Marcus asked. We'll see, Dr. Wellington replied. I've asked our mathematics department head to review them personally. The weekend passed in excruciating slowness. By Sunday night, Elijah had convinced himself he'd failed, while his parents tried to prepare him for either outcome. Monday morning, Marcus drove to work with his heart in his throat. When Dr. Wellington entered the car, he said nothing for several minutes. Marcus, he finally said, your son's results were extraordinary. In mathematics, he scored higher than any student in Westfield's history. The other subjects were adequate, if not exceptional. We would like to offer him the service scholarship, with the condition that he receives tutoring in his weaker subjects. Marcus gripped the steering wheel to steady himself. Thank you, sir. You won't regret this. I hope not, Dr. Wellington replied. Classes begin next Monday. He'll need the uniform and supply list, which I've brought for you. And Marcus? Yes, sir. This is highly unusual. There will be those who question my decision. Elijah will need to prove himself, repeatedly. He will, Marcus promised, already imagining his son's face when he shared the news. That evening, the Johnson household erupted in celebration. Lisa cried tears of joy while Elijah sat in stunned silence. I'm actually going to Westfield Academy, he whispered, as if saying it too loudly might make the opportunity vanish. You are, his father confirmed. But remember what we talked about. Some people there won't want you to succeed. Don't give them any reason to doubt you belong. Elijah nodded solemnly. Neither he nor his parents could have imagined just how prophetic those words would prove to be. Monday morning arrived with a crisp chill in the air. Elijah stood before the small mirror in the bathroom, adjusting the blue and gold tie of his new Westfield Academy uniform. The blazer felt stiff, the shoes uncomfortably shiny. Everything about the uniform screamed that he didn't belong. You look very handsome, his mother said, appearing in the doorway. Her eyes were damp, but her smile was genuine. I feel like I'm wearing a costume, Elijah admitted. It's just clothes, she replied, smoothing his collar. What matters is what's in here. She tapped his forehead gently. Marcus drove them both to the school that morning, Elijah in the passenger seat instead of his usual place in the back with Dr. Wellington. Remember, Marcus said as they approached the imposing gates, you earned your place here. Don't let anyone tell you different. Elijah nodded, clutching his new textbooks tightly as they pulled into the circular driveway. Students streamed toward the entrance, their easy confidence a stark contrast to his apprehension. At the administrative office, a stern-faced secretary handed him his schedule without a smile. Dr. Wellington asked me to remind you that the service scholarship requires maintaining a 3.8 GPA, she said, her tone suggesting she didn't expect him to succeed. Elijah's first class was Advanced Placement Calculus with Ms. Victoria Harrington. He arrived early, choosing a seat in the back corner, hoping to observe before being observed. The classroom filled quickly. No one sat beside him. A few students glanced his way with undisguised curiosity, others with thinly veiled disdain. Ms. Harrington swept in precisely as the bell rang. She was tall and elegant, with sharp features and perfectly coiffed blonde hair. Her gaze swept the room and landed on Elijah. You must be our new, scholarship student, she said, the pause speaking volumes. Elijah Johnson, correct? Yes, ma'am, he replied. Well, Mr. Johnson, at Westfield we expect students to sit at the front if they wish to excel. Please move to that empty desk. She pointed to a seat in the center of the front row. Elijah gathered his books, feeling every eye in the room on him as he made his way forward. As he sat down, he heard someone behind him whisper, "Driver's kid thinks he belongs here." Ms. Harrington began the class by writing a complex differential equation on the board. Who can tell me how to solve this? She asked. No hands went up. Elijah studied the equation, immediately seeing the approach needed. Hesitantly, he raised his hand. Ms. Harrington's eyebrows rose. Mr. Johnson. You believe you can solve this university-level problem? Yes, ma'am, he said quietly. Then please, enlighten us, she said, her tone making it clear she expected him to fail. Elijah approached the board and began writing, his hand moving with confidence as he applied substitution methods he'd taught himself from library books. When he finished, he stepped back. Ms. Harrington examined his work, her expression hardening. This is incorrect, she declared. Elijah frowned, rechecking his calculations. I don't believe it is, ma'am. If you integrate both sides, are you contradicting me, Mr. Johnson? Her voice was ice. No, ma'am, I just, return to your seat. This is what happens when we admit students who aren't properly prepared for Westfield's rigor. The class tittered as Elijah returned to his desk, his face burning with humiliation. He stared at his notebook as Ms. Harrington proceeded to solve the equation using a more conventional method, reaching the same answer he had. The rest of the day proceeded in similar fashion. In chemistry, the teacher assigned him a lab partner who openly complained. At lunch, he found no place to sit in the cafeteria, eventually taking his food to a bathroom stall. By afternoon, his back ached from tension. In his final class of the day, Ms. Harrington's again, for a special mathematics seminar, he made the mistake of correcting an error in her derivation. "Stand up, Mr. Johnson," she commanded, her voice deadly quiet. He did so, aware of the sudden silence in the room. "Since you believe you know better than your teacher, perhaps you'd like to teach the class." "No, ma'am, I just noticed that the coefficient should be negative, not positive." Her hand moved so quickly he barely saw it coming. The ruler struck his back with a sharp crack. Pain radiated across his shoulders. "We do not tolerate disrespect at Westfield, Mr. Johnson. Is that clear?" Stunned, Elijah could only nod. No teacher had ever struck him before. "Yes, ma'am," he managed. "Good. Now sit down and be silent for the remainder of class." He lowered himself gingerly into his seat, the pain in his back making him wince. No one in the classroom reacted, not a gasp, not a protest. Apparently, at Westfield Academy, this was normal. When the final bell rang, Elijah gathered his books with shaking hands and fled to the bathroom. Lifting his shirt, he found an angry red welt across his shoulder blades. How would he explain this to his parents? Elijah managed to hide the welt from his parents that evening, wearing a sweatshirt despite the warm weather and avoiding his mother's hugs with excuses about homework. He didn't want to worry them, didn't want his father to risk his job by confronting Dr. Wellington. "How was your first day?" his mother asked over dinner, her eyes hopeful. "Fine," Elijah lied. "The classes are challenging." "That's what you wanted, right?" his father said encouragingly. "To be pushed academically?" Elijah nodded, pushing food around his plate. "The teachers have high expectations." That night, he struggled to find a comfortable position to sleep. The pain in his back had deepened to a throbbing ache. More painful, though, was the memory of Ms. Harrington's contempt and his classmates' silent approval of his humiliation. The next morning, dressing for school was agony. Each movement sent jolts of pain through his shoulders. When his mother knocked on his bedroom door, he quickly pulled on his blazer despite the discomfort. "Elijah? Are you ready?" "Coming, Mom." At school, Elijah adopted a new strategy, invisibility. He sat quietly, avoided eye contact, and kept his hand down even when he knew the answers. At lunch, he discovered an empty classroom where he could eat alone, sparing himself the rejection of the cafeteria. It was there that Zoe Franklin found him, 3 days into his Westfield experience. "So this is where you disappeared to," she said, appearing in the doorway. Elijah tensed. Zoe was in several of his classes, one of the few students who didn't openly sneer at him. She was petite with corkscrew curls and wire-rimmed glasses. "I like the quiet," he said cautiously. "Mind if I join you? The cafeteria's a zoo." She sat before he could answer, unpacking a lunch that made his sandwich look pitiful. "You're really good at math," she said matter-of-factly. "Harrington was wrong to treat you like that." Elijah stared at her, surprised by the direct acknowledgement. "She doesn't like being challenged," Zoe continued. "Especially not by scholarship students." "How did you know I'm on scholarship?" Zoe rolled her eyes. "Everyone knows. Dr. Wellington's driver's son gets a free ride. The rumor mill worked overtime." Elijah's appetite vanished. "Great. For what it's worth, I think it's cool you're here because of your brain, not your parents' bank account." Before Elijah could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from his mother. School counselor called. "You've been skipping classes. Call me ASAP." "I have to go," Elijah said, gathering his things. "You okay? You're moving like you're hurt." I'm fine, he insisted, but his wince as he stood betrayed him. No, you're not, Zoe said. Did Harrington do that? The thing with the ruler? Elijah's silence was answer enough. You should tell someone, she said. Who? Dr. Wellington. The man who signs my father's paychecks. Zoe had no answer for that. That evening, Elijah finally broke down and told his parents everything, the humiliation, the strike, the pain that made it impossible to sit comfortably in class. His mother was furious. That woman hit my child. I'm going to the school board. Mom, no, Elijah pleaded. If you make a scene, they'll find some reason to take away my scholarship. Your education isn't worth this, son, Marcus said gravely. Yes, it is, Elijah insisted. I can handle it. I need to be smarter about how I handle the teachers. Please, give me a chance to make this work. His parents exchanged worried glances. Finally, his father spoke. 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to show us that things are improving. If not, we're going to Dr. Wellington, job or no job. Elijah nodded, relief mixing with apprehension. 2 weeks to navigate a world that seemed determined to break him. That night, as he lay awake thinking, Elijah made a decision. If he couldn't sit in class without pain, and couldn't risk raising his hand, he would find another way to learn, another place to prove his abilities. The empty classroom where he ate lunch would become his sanctuary. And maybe, just maybe, he could turn this nightmare into something else entirely. The classroom was on the 3rd floor of Westfield's East Wing, room 307, a space used for advanced physics in the mornings but empty during lunch in the afternoon. Elijah had discovered it by accident while searching for a place to escape the cafeteria's hostile stares. A week after his confrontation with Ms. Harrington, Elijah had established a routine. He'd grab his lunch, hurry to room 307, and spend the hour working on mathematics far beyond the Westfield curriculum. The empty classroom, with its sprawling whiteboards and afternoon sunlight, became his refuge. It was there, on a Tuesday afternoon, that Mr. James found him. Mr. James was Westfield's head custodian, a tall, broad-shouldered man with salt and pepper hair and hands calloused from decades of work. Elijah had noticed him before, quietly maintaining the academy's pristine appearance while remaining as invisible to the students as Elijah himself tried to be. You're not supposed to be in here, son, Mr. James said, standing in the doorway with his cleaning cart. Elijah jumped, nearly dropping his notebook. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't think anyone would mind. I'll leave. Mr. James stepped further into the room, his eyes drawn to the whiteboard where Elijah had been working out a complex problem on quantum field theory. You did all that? He asked, gesturing to the equations. Elijah nodded cautiously. Mind telling me what it means? It's a mathematical model for understanding quantum particle behavior in curved spacetime, Elijah explained, waiting for the dismissal, the demand to erase his work and leave. Instead, Mr. James surprised him with a low whistle. I've been cleaning classrooms at Westfield for 27 years. Seen a lot of smart kids come and go. Never seen equations like that from a student. He moved closer to examine the board. You're Marcus's boy, aren't you? The one on the service scholarship. Yes, sir. And why are you up here during lunch instead of in the cafeteria with the other students? Elijah hesitated. I prefer the quiet. Mr. James's gaze was knowing. Aha. And it has nothing to do with how those rich kids treat you. Or why you're standing at that board instead of sitting at a desk. Elijah's silence confirmed his suspicions. Let me guess. Harrington. Elijah's head snapped up in surprise. She's done it before, Mr. James said grimly. Always to scholarship kids. Always when no one important is watching. You know about that? I know a lot about what happens at Westfield. Invisible people see everything. He gestured to the equations again. You're hiding your light, son. Why? It's easier that way, Elijah admitted. When I showed what I could do, he stopped, embarrassed. She tried to put you in your place, Mr. James finished for him. That's how people like her operate. They need to believe they're superior, and anyone who challenges that belief becomes a threat. Elijah nodded, surprised by the custodian's insight. You know, Mr. James continued, I went to college for engineering before my mother got sick and I had to drop out to care for her. Never went back. He ran a hand along the edge of the whiteboard. Sometimes I look at these equations you young folks work on and remember what might have been. He turned back to Elijah with sudden decision. Tell you what. You want to use this room during lunch, you go right ahead. I'll make sure it stays empty for you. And I won't clean these boards until you're ready for me to. Really? You do that? On one condition, Mr. James said, his expression serious. You stop hiding what you can do. Not all at once, I understand you're in a tough spot. But bit by bit. Because talent like yours, it's not meant to stay hidden. Before Elijah could respond, they heard voices in the hallway. Mr. James quickly moved to his cart, assuming the posture of the invisible worker that Westfield students and faculty had come to expect. Think about what I said, he murmured as he pushed his cart toward the door. Oh, and you might want to lock the door when you're in here. Just in case. After he left, Elijah stood staring at the equations he'd written. For the first time since starting at Westfield, he felt something other than fear and isolation. Someone had seen him, really seen him, and encouraged him to shine. The next day, Zoe was waiting outside room 307 when Elijah arrived for lunch. So this is your secret hideout, she said with a grin. How did you find me? I followed you. Don't worry, I'm not a stalker. I just wanted to make sure you were okay after yesterday. Elijah hesitated, then held the door open. Want to come in? Inside, Zoe whistled at the complex equations covering the whiteboard. Okay, I knew you were good, but this is next level. It's just something I'm working on for fun, Elijah said, embarrassed. For fun. Normal people play video games for fun, Elijah. For the first time since coming to Westfield, Elijah laughed. It felt good. Over the next week, room 307 transformed from a hiding place into a sanctuary of genuine learning. Mr. James kept his word, ensuring the room remained available during lunch. Sometimes he would linger, asking questions about Elijah's work that revealed a sharp, curious mind beneath his custodian's uniform. Zoe became a regular visitor too, bringing her own advanced chemistry work. Unlike Elijah's other classmates, she treated him as an equal, sometimes even asking for his help with particularly complex problems. You should enter the Westfield mathematics competition, she said one day, watching him work through a problem. It's in 3 weeks. The winner gets recognized at the spring assembly and a recommendation letter from Dr. Wellington for college applications. Ms. Harrington is one of the judges, Elijah pointed out. She'd never let me win. Maybe not, Zoe conceded. But the other judges would see what you can do. Including Dr. Wellington. Elijah considered this as he added another equation to the board. He still hadn't told his parents about room 307 or Mr. James or Zoe. They monitored his back injury, which was slowly healing, and asked daily about his treatment at school. He gave them carefully edited versions of the truth, buying time to prove he could make Westfield work. I'll think about it, he told Zoe, though he had no intention of entering any competition that would put him directly in Miss Harrington's crosshairs again. What Elijah didn't know was that fate had other plans for bringing his abilities to light, plans that would unfold in room 307 the very next day, when an unexpected visitor would change the course of his Westfield journey forever. Dr. Richard Wellington prided himself on knowing everything that happened within Westfield Academy's hallowed halls. 15 years as principal had taught him that information was power, and he maintained that power through regular, unannounced walks through the campus during class hours. It was during one such walk, 2 weeks after Elijah Johnson had started at Westfield, that Dr. Wellington discovered something unexpected. He'd been making his way through the East Wing, mentally noting a scuff on the wall that would need attention, when he heard the squeak of a dry erase marker coming from room 307. According to his mental schedule, that room should have been empty during this period. Dr. Wellington approached quietly, years of catching students in various infractions having taught him the value of surprise. Through the small window in the door, he could see a single figure standing at the whiteboard, writing with focused intensity. It took him a moment to recognize Marcus Johnson's son. The boy moved differently here than he did in class, with confidence, even grace, as he filled the board with what appeared to be complex mathematical notations. Intrigued, Dr. Wellington opened the door silently. Elijah didn't notice him. He was too absorbed in his work, muttering to himself as his hand flew across the board, creating a tapestry of symbols and equations that covered nearly the entire surface. Dr. Wellington was no mathematician, but he had spent enough time observing Westfield's renowned mathematics department to recognize that this was far beyond high school level work. In fact, it appeared to be beyond undergraduate level. "Mr. Johnson," he said finally. Elijah spun around, marker still in hand, his expression transforming from concentration to alarm. "Dr. Wellington. I'm sorry, I have permission to be here." Mr. James said. "Our custodian does not determine room assignments," Dr. Wellington interrupted, stepping fully into the classroom. "However, that's not my primary concern at the moment." He gestured toward the whiteboard. "Would you care to explain what you're working on?" Elijah swallowed hard. "It's a mathematical approach to solving the black hole information paradox, sir. I've been exploring whether quantum entanglement might preserve information that seems to be lost when matter crosses the event horizon." Dr. Wellington blinked. This was not the answer he had expected. "And where did you learn about such advanced theoretical physics, Mr. Johnson? This is clearly beyond our curriculum." "I taught myself, sir. From library books and online lectures from MIT and Stanford. Their university websites have free course materials." Dr. Wellington stepped closer to the board, studying the equations. He noticed that some were marked with asterisks and question marks, Elijah's own system for noting uncertainties or alternative approaches. "Why are you working on this during school hours instead of attending class?" Elijah's gaze dropped to the floor. "I have a free period now, sir. And I find it difficult to sit in class sometimes." "Difficult how?" "Physically difficult, sir." Something in the boy's tone made Dr. Wellington look more closely. He noticed how Elijah stood with his shoulders slightly hunched, as if protecting himself. "Are you injured, Mr. Johnson?" A long pause. "It's getting better, sir." Dr. Wellington felt a prickle of unease. "How did this injury occur?" "I'd rather not say, sir. It's not important." But it was important, Dr. Wellington realized. Something was happening at his school, something he had missed. "These equations," he said, changing tack and gesturing toward the board. "Have you shown them to your mathematics teacher?" "No, sir." "Why not?" "Ms. Harrington has a doctorate in applied mathematics. She could provide valuable feedback." Elijah's expression shuddered completely. "I prefer to work independently, sir." "I see." And suddenly, Dr. Wellington did see, or at least, began to suspect. "Mr. Johnson, I'd like you to wait here. There's someone I want to consult about your work." Without waiting for a response, Dr. Wellington left the room, pulling out his phone as he walked briskly down the hall. He called the mathematics department, requesting that Ms. Harrington meet him immediately in room 307. 10 minutes later, Victoria Harrington arrived, her expression a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. "You wanted to see me, Richard? I have a class in 15 minutes. "Yes, Victoria. Please step inside." He gestured toward the classroom door. "I'd like your professional assessment of some mathematical work." They entered together. Elijah stood exactly where Dr. Wellington had left him, his posture rigid with tension. Ms. Harrington's eyes widened as she took in the equations covering the board, then narrowed when she spotted Elijah. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. "Has this student been defacing school property?" Actually, Dr. Wellington replied mildly, I'm more interested in your assessment of the mathematics itself. Are these equations correct? Ms. Harrington scanned the board, her expression shifting from dismissal to surprise to something darker as she realized the complexity of what she was seeing. These appear to be advanced theoretical physics equations, she said stiffly. Beyond the scope of our curriculum. Yes, but are they correct? Dr. Wellington pressed. I would need time to verify all of this, but, yes, the approach seems sound. She turned to Elijah, her voice sharp. Where did you copy this from, Mr. Johnson? I didn't copy it, Elijah replied quietly. These are my own derivations, based on existing research. Impossible, Ms. Harrington scoffed. These concepts are doctoral level at minimum. Elijah said nothing, but Dr. Wellington noticed his hands clenching at his sides. Perhaps a demonstration, the principal suggested. Victoria, could you pose a problem, something challenging but verifiable, for Mr. Johnson to solve? Ms. Harrington's lips thinned, but she turned to the one clean section of the whiteboard and wrote out a complex differential equation. Solve this, she said to Elijah, her tone making it clear she expected failure. Without hesitation, Elijah took the marker and began working. His approach was unconventional but elegant, and within minutes he had arrived at the solution. Ms. Harrington's face had lost all color. This isn't possible, she whispered. And yet, we've just witnessed it, Dr. Wellington replied. Mr. Johnson, you may go to your next class. Please come to my office after school today. When Elijah had left, Dr. Wellington turned to Ms. Harrington. I believe we need to discuss your teaching methods, Victoria. Particularly as they relate to Mr. Johnson. Richard, surely you don't believe. I believe, he interrupted, that I've been remiss in my oversight of certain aspects of Westfield's operations. That ends today. Dr. Wellington sat behind his desk, fingers steepled as he regarded Victoria Harrington with a measured gaze. The afternoon light cast long shadows through the windows of his oak-paneled office, giving the scene a courtroom gravity. I've been reviewing some concerning reports, Victoria, he began, his tone deceptively casual. About your disciplinary methods. Ms. Harrington shifted slightly in her chair but maintained her composure. I maintain high standards, Richard. You've always appreciated that about my teaching. High standards are one thing. Physical punishment is quite another. Her eyes narrowed. I assume the Johnson boy has been complaining. Scholarship students often struggle with the rigor we require. Actually, Elijah hasn't said a word. Which I find even more concerning. Dr. Wellington opened a folder on his desk. However, I've spoken with several sources, including other faculty members who have witnessed your methods. Occasional disciplinary measures are permitted under Westfield's charter, she said defensively. Striking a student hard enough to leave lasting injuries is never permitted, Dr. Wellington countered, his voice hardening. Nor is deliberately humiliating students based on their socio-economic background. Ms. Harrington's facade began to crack. That boy has been disruptive from day one, questioning my methods, correcting me in front of the class. Was he wrong? Dr. Wellington asked quietly. That's beside the point. On the contrary, I think it's precisely the point. He leaned forward. Victoria, I've known you for 15 years. You're a brilliant mathematician and, generally, an effective teacher. But what I saw today troubles me deeply. Elijah Johnson possesses extraordinary mathematical talent you should be nurturing, not suppressing. You're taking the word of a custodian and a scholarship student over mine. Her voice rose incredulously. I've taken no one's word. I've observed evidence myself. Dr. Wellington's tone remained calm, which seemed to unnerve Ms. Harrington more than anger would have. The equations in room 307. The way Elijah flinches when you approach. The fact that he stands rather than sits in class due to back injuries. A knock at the door interrupted them. Enter, Dr. Wellington called. Marcus Johnson stepped into the office, his chauffeur's uniform impeccable as always, his expression carefully neutral. You asked to see me, sir. Yes, Marcus. Please sit down. Dr. Wellington gestured to the chair beside Ms. Harrington, who visibly stiffened. Marcus, I'm going to ask you something, and I need your complete honesty, regardless of any concerns about your employment. Dr. Wellington's gaze was direct. Has Elijah mentioned any physical disciplinary measures taken against him at Westfield? Marcus's eyes flicked briefly to Ms. Harrington before returning to Dr. Wellington. He has, sir. Though he begged us not to report it, fearing it would jeopardize his scholarship. I see. And the nature of these measures? Marcus's professional composure slipped slightly. Ms. Harrington struck him across the back with a ruler when he corrected a mathematical error. The blow left a welt that is still healing 2 weeks later. My son cannot sit comfortably in class. Ms. Harrington's face flushed. This is absurd. Ms. Harrington, Dr. Wellington cut her off, I suggest you consider very carefully what you say next. This conversation is being recorded as part of an official disciplinary review. She fell silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Marcus, I owe you an apology, Dr. Wellington continued. When I offered Elijah the service scholarship, I promised him an opportunity. Instead, he has faced discrimination and abuse within these walls. Sir, Elijah still wants to stay, Marcus said quietly. Despite everything, he values the education he's receiving. That speaks to his character, not to our institutions. Dr. Wellington stood, pacing behind his desk. I've failed in my responsibility to ensure all students are treated with dignity. That changes today. He turned to Ms. Harrington. Victoria, you are suspended effective immediately, pending a full review by the Board of Trustees. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. You can't do this, she sputtered. My contract. Your contract includes a morality clause and a commitment to uphold Westfield's values. Physical abuse of students violates both. His voice was steel. Be grateful I'm not pursuing criminal charges. As if on cue, the door opened again, and Westfield's head of security appeared. Ms. Harrington. If you'll come with me. After she had been escorted out, Dr. Wellington turned back to Marcus. I'd like to meet with you, your wife, and Elijah this evening. Not here, somewhere more neutral. Perhaps your home, if that's comfortable for you. Marcus looked stunned. Our home. Sir, it's nothing like what you're used to. All the more reason, Dr. Wellington replied. I think it's time I stepped outside my usual environment. Would 7 o'clock be convenient? Yes, sir, Marcus replied, still appearing bewildered by this turn of events. Excellent. Oh, and Marcus. I'll drive myself tonight. You deserve an evening off duty. After Marcus left, Dr. Wellington remained standing at the window, watching as Ms. Harrington was escorted to her car. 25 years in education, 15 as Westfield's principal, and somehow he had allowed this culture of elitism and cruelty to flourish under his leadership. The equations he had seen Elijah working on that morning had been a revelation, not just of the boy's extraordinary talent, but of Dr. Wellington's own blindness. How many other brilliant minds had Westfield failed because they didn't come from the right families or the right neighborhoods? The thought was deeply uncomfortable. Dr. Wellington had always prided himself on running a meritocratic institution. Today had shown him just how hollow that pride was. His phone buzzed with a text from the board chair, responding to his brief explanation of Ms. Harrington's suspension. Risky move. Parents pay for prestige, not controversy. Full briefing expected tomorrow. Dr. Wellington put the phone away without responding. For the first time in years, he was questioning Westfield's, and his own, priorities. The prestige that Westfield parents paid for had become a shield for behavior that should never be tolerated in any educational setting. As he gathered his things to leave, Dr. Wellington found himself thinking about what he had witnessed in room 307. Not just Elijah's mathematical brilliance, but the evidence of a young man creating his own sanctuary in a hostile environment. The boy had found a way to thrive despite, not because of, Westfield Academy. That reality demanded change, change that would begin tonight in the Johnson family's modest home. The Johnson family home looked exactly as it had when Marcus had driven Dr. Wellington past it once, years ago, on an alternate route to avoid traffic. Small but well-maintained, with flower boxes beneath the windows and a neatly trimmed lawn, a testament to pride despite limited means. Dr. Wellington parked his Mercedes at the curb, noting how out of place it looked on this street of modest homes and practical vehicles. He straightened his tie, suddenly aware that his bespoke suit probably cost more than a month of Marcus's salary. Lisa Reynolds Johnson answered the door, her expression a careful blend of hospitality and wariness. "Dr. Wellington, please come in." The living room was small but immaculate, decorated with family photos and a few well-worn but carefully chosen pieces of furniture. Elijah sat on the couch, his posture stiff with nervousness. Marcus stood nearby, still adjusting to seeing his employer in their home. "Thank you for inviting me into your home," Dr. Wellington began, taking the offered seat. "You didn't leave us much choice," Lisa replied with a directness that surprised him. "Mom," Elijah murmured, embarrassed. "It's all right," Dr. Wellington said. "Your mother is right to be cautious. Westfield, and I personally, have failed your family." He turned to Elijah. "I owe you an apology, Elijah. When I offered you the service scholarship, I believed I was providing an opportunity. Instead, I placed you in a hostile environment without adequate support or protection." Elijah's eyes widened slightly. "Ms. Harrington has been suspended," Dr. Wellington confirmed. "And there will be other changes as well. But first, I'd like to discuss your future." "His future at Westfield?" Marcus asked cautiously. "His future beyond Westfield." Dr. Wellington leaned forward. "Elijah, the work I saw you doing today, the equations dealing with quantum entanglement and black hole information theory, is genuinely extraordinary. Well beyond high school level." "He's always been this way," Lisa said, pride evident in her voice. "Teaching himself calculus at 12, quantum physics at 14. "I suspected as much," Dr. Wellington nodded. "Which is why I've arranged for a special evaluation." He reached into his briefcase and removed a folder. "This is Dr. Benjamin Lewis. He's a professor of theoretical physics at MIT and an old friend of mine. I've asked him to assess Elijah's mathematical abilities, not for Westfield's purposes, but to ensure we're providing the right educational path forward." "MIT?" Elijah's voice was barely above a whisper, his eyes fixed on the folder. "Yes. Dr. Lewis will be flying in tomorrow. If you're comfortable with it, he'd like to spend several hours working with you on Saturday." Marcus and Lisa exchanged glances. "What exactly would this evaluation involve?" Marcus asked. "Nothing stressful or exam-like," Dr. Wellington assured them. "More of a collaborative session, working through various problems, discussing approaches, exploring Elijah's understanding of advanced concepts." "And the purpose?" Lisa pressed. "To determine if Elijah might benefit from university-level education now, rather than waiting until after high school." A stunned silence fell over the room. "You want to send him to college?" "He's only 15, Lisa finally said. "Many universities have early entrance programs for exceptional students," Dr. Wellington explained. "MIT, Caltech, Stanford, all have provisions for students like Elijah." "What about his high school diploma?" Marcus asked. "There are options: concurrent enrollment, credit by examination. Dr. Lewis can explain the details better than I can." Dr. Wellington turned back to Elijah. "But only if this interests you. This is about expanding your opportunities, not forcing you into a path you don't want." Elijah seemed overwhelmed. "I never thought. I mean, college was always something for the future, after scholarships and student loans end." "Finances wouldn't be an issue," Dr. Wellington interrupted gently. "There are scholarships specifically for students with your level of ability. And I would personally ensure any gaps are covered." "Why?" Lisa asked bluntly. "Why are you doing this?" Dr. Wellington considered the question carefully. Because I've spent 15 years running a school that claims to nurture exceptional minds, while actually catering to privilege. Today, I saw what true intellectual exceptionality looks like. I'd like to make amends by ensuring Elijah receives the education he deserves. The sincerity in his voice seemed to surprise the Johnson family. Could I think about it? Elijah asked. Of course. Dr. Lewis won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. You have until then to decide if you want to meet with him. As Dr. Wellington prepared to leave, Elijah walked him to the door. Dr. Wellington. What happens at Westfield? With Ms. Harrington gone? Changes are coming, Dr. Wellington replied. Beginning with how we select scholarship recipients and how we ensure their well-being. Your experience has revealed serious flaws in our system. I didn't mean to cause trouble, Elijah said quietly. You didn't cause anything, Elijah. You simply had the courage to pursue knowledge despite obstacles that never should have existed. He paused at the door. Whatever you decide about meeting Dr. Lewis, your place at Westfield remains secure. But I suspect you're destined for something beyond what even Westfield can offer. The next morning, Elijah texted his decision: he would meet with Dr. Lewis. Saturday arrived bright and clear. Dr. Wellington had arranged for the evaluation to take place in Westfield's mathematics conference room, neutral ground that offered the resources they might need. Dr. Benjamin Lewis was not what Elijah had expected. Instead of the stern academic he had imagined, Dr. Lewis was a casual, energetic man in his 50s with wild gray hair and sneakers that looked like they'd traveled the world. So you're the young man Richard's been raving about, he said, shaking Elijah's hand vigorously. Let's see what you've got. What followed was the most exhilarating 6 hours of Elijah's life. Dr. Lewis didn't test him in any conventional sense. Instead, they explored mathematics together, solving problems, debating approaches, diving down theoretical rabbit holes that left Elijah breathless with intellectual excitement. Dr. Wellington observed silently from the corner, occasionally catching Marcus and Lisa's eyes as they watched their son blossom under genuine academic engagement. By late afternoon, Dr. Lewis had filled multiple whiteboards with equations and diagrams, many initiated by Elijah himself. Remarkable, Dr. Lewis said finally, looking at their work with satisfaction. Absolutely remarkable. What happens now? Marcus asked from his seat against the wall. Dr. Lewis turned to the Johnson family, his expression serious but excited. With your permission, I'd like to begin the process of bringing Elijah to MIT as a special student this fall. He would take advanced mathematics and physics courses while completing his high school requirements concurrently. MIT, Elijah repeated, as if the word itself were magical. You belong there, young man, Dr. Lewis said firmly. Minds like yours are why we teach. As they discussed logistics and next steps, Dr. Wellington found himself observing the scene with mixed emotions. Pride in having recognized Elijah's potential, regret for the suffering he had endured, and determination that his experience would drive meaningful change at Westfield. The Johnson family left with Dr. Lewis, heading to dinner to continue their discussion about Elijah's future. Dr. Wellington remained behind, looking at the complex equations still covering the whiteboards, tangible evidence of a brilliant mind that had nearly been crushed by the very institution meant to nurture it. Tomorrow, he would face the Board of Trustees. There would be resistance to the changes he planned to implement. But today's revelation had steeled his resolve. Westfield Academy would change, or he would resign in protest. The Westfield Academy Board of Trustees emergency session convened on Monday morning in the wood-paneled conference room reserved for the school's most important decisions. 12 of the most influential people in the city sat around the massive mahogany table, their expressions ranging from concerned to openly hostile. This is unprecedented, said Harold Whitmore, the board chair and CEO of a multinational corporation. Suspending a teacher of Victoria Harrington's caliber without board consultation, for physically abusing a student, Dr. Wellington interrupted calmly, standing at the head of the table. Let's be precise about the reason. Allegations of physical discipline, corrected Eleanor Brinton, a board member whose family had attended Westfield for 3 generations. Allegations which should have been thoroughly investigated before such drastic action. The evidence was unambiguous, Dr. Wellington replied. And I've prepared a full briefing for each of you. He distributed folders containing witness statements, medical documentation of Elijah's injuries, and testimonials from other students who had experienced similar treatment from Ms. Harrington over the years, testimonials gathered discreetly over the weekend by Dr. Wellington's most trusted staff members. Silence fell as the board members reviewed the materials. Several looked genuinely shocked, others seemed more concerned with the potential scandal than the actual abuse. Even if these allegations are true, said Robert Carmichael, a prominent attorney, there are protocols for handling such matters. Quiet resolution, appropriate compensation to the family, and perpetuation of the systemic problem, Dr. Wellington finished. Which brings me to the second purpose of this meeting. He moved to the whiteboard and wrote 4 words, Westfield Academy Equity Initiative. Over the past 72 hours, I've conducted a thorough review of our scholarship programs, disciplinary practices, and faculty oversight. What I found was deeply troubling. He turned to face the board. We have created an environment that claims to value excellence while actually valuing privilege. We have allowed talented students from less advantaged backgrounds to be mistreated, marginalized, and in some cases, driven out. Westfield isn't a charity, Richard, Harold Whitmore said dismissively. Parents pay substantial tuition for a certain caliber of education and peer group. They pay for excellence, Dr. Wellington countered. And we're failing to deliver it by limiting our definition of who belongs here. He proceeded to outline his plan, a reformed scholarship program that would actively recruit talented students from underserved communities, mandatory cultural competency training for all faculty and staff, zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior from anyone, regardless of donor status or family legacy, and a new oversight committee composed of students, parents, and faculty to ensure accountability. This is absurd, Eleanor Brinton exclaimed. You're proposing to fundamentally alter Westfield's character and tradition. I'm proposing to fulfill Westfield's mission statement, Dr. Wellington replied, projecting the text onto the screen behind him. To nurture excellence and develop the leaders of tomorrow. Nowhere does it specify that those leaders must come from privileged backgrounds. The parents will revolt, warned another board member. Some might, Dr. Wellington acknowledged. Others will recognize that diversity of thought and experience makes for stronger education. And frankly, any parent who objects to these principles of basic fairness and dignity is welcome to withdraw their child. You're risking everything, Harold said, his voice low with anger. The endowment, our reputation, our standing. No, Dr. Wellington replied firmly. I'm risking nothing of value. What I am doing is acknowledging a profound failure of leadership, my own, and taking steps to correct it. He paused, looking each board member in the eye. I met Dr. Benjamin Lewis and the Johnson family yesterday evening after their session. MIT is offering Elijah a special placement in their advanced mathematics program starting this fall, with a full scholarship. That young man, who was physically struck for demonstrating his brilliance, who sat on the floor because his back was too injured to use a chair, is being hailed as a once-in-a-generation talent by one of the world's leading institutions. The room fell silent. That's the true cost of our current system, Dr. Wellington continued quietly. How many Elijahs have we missed? How many brilliant minds have we failed because they didn't fit our narrow definition of who belongs? He straightened, his decision made. The changes I've outlined will be implemented immediately. If the board chooses to oppose them, my resignation is on the table. That's blackmail, Harold sputtered. No, it's principle, Dr. Wellington replied. Something Westfield claims to teach its students. 3 hours of heated debate followed. Arguments, counter-arguments, threats, and eventually, compromise. By afternoon, the board had reluctantly approved a modified version of Dr. Wellington's plan, with the stipulation that he personally oversee its implementation and take responsibility for any negative consequences. When the Johnson family arrived at Westfield that evening for their scheduled meeting, they found not just Dr. Wellington waiting, but the entire board of trustees. What's happening? Marcus asked, instinctively moving slightly in front of his son. Justice, Dr. Wellington replied simply, gesturing for them to enter the conference room. What followed was something the Johnsons had never expected: a formal apology from the Board of Trustees, acknowledgement of the wrong done to Elijah, and the announcement of the changes being implemented as a direct result of his experience. "While nothing can undo the mistreatment you endured," Harold Whitmore said, clearly reading from a prepared statement, "Westfield Academy acknowledges its failure to provide you with the safe, supportive educational environment you deserved." Elijah listened with wide eyes as they outlined the MIT opportunity, the full financial support being offered, and the transformation his experience had catalyzed at Westfield. Additionally, Dr. Wellington added, "We'll be establishing the Elijah Johnson Scholarship for Mathematical Excellence, a full scholarship awarded annually to a student with exceptional mathematical talent." "You're naming a scholarship after me?" Elijah asked incredulously. "After the student whose courage and brilliance forced us to confront our own failings," Dr. Wellington replied. "It seems fitting that your legacy at Westfield will be creating opportunities for others like you." As the meeting concluded, Ms. Harrington's fate was also addressed. She would not be returning to Westfield. The board had negotiated her resignation with a confidentiality agreement, not ideal from Dr. Wellington's perspective, but a step toward justice nonetheless. Outside the conference room, as the board members departed, Dr. Wellington spoke privately with the Johnson family. "Elijah, whatever path you choose, MIT or remaining at Westfield until graduation, I want you to know that what you've accomplished here goes beyond mathematics. You've changed an institution that desperately needed changing." Elijah, still processing everything, nodded thoughtfully. "I think I want to try MIT," he said finally. "But I'd like to stay connected to Westfield somehow. Maybe I could come back sometimes, talk to other scholarship students." "I think that would be wonderful," Dr. Wellington replied, surprised by the young man's generosity after all he'd experienced. "Your perspective would be invaluable." As the Johnsons prepared to leave, Marcus hung back, extending his hand to Dr. Wellington. "Thank you," he said simply. "Not just for Elijah, but for all the kids who'll come after him." Dr. Wellington shook his hand. "I should be thanking you, for raising a son with the courage to shine despite every obstacle we put in his way." After they left, Dr. Wellington returned to his office, knowing the real work was just beginning. Changing policies was the easy part, changing hearts and minds would be far more challenging. But as he looked out his window at the sprawling Westfield campus, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years, the sense that he was truly fulfilling his calling as an educator. Not by maintaining a prestigious institution, but by transforming it into something worthy of students like Elijah Johnson. 6 months passed like the turning of seasons, bringing profound changes to both Elijah Johnson and Westfield Academy. Elijah flourished at MIT, where his mathematical brilliance found the nurturing environment it deserved. The transition hadn't been without challenges, adapting to college-level coursework, navigating a campus filled with older students, missing his parents despite their weekly visits. But for the first time in his academic life, Elijah felt truly seen for his abilities rather than judged for his background. At Westfield, Dr. Wellington's equity initiative faced initial resistance but gradually gained momentum. Some families withdrew their children in protest, but others, more than expected, embraced the changes with enthusiasm. The newly established Oversight Committee, which included parents from diverse backgrounds, worked diligently to ensure that all students received fair treatment. On a crisp October afternoon, Elijah returned to Westfield for the first time since leaving for MIT. The campus looked the same, imposing brick buildings, manicured lawns, the sense of history and privilege embedded in every corner. Yet something felt different. Dr. Wellington greeted him at the entrance, no longer the distant administrator but a genuine mentor. "Welcome back, Elijah. How does it feel to return?" "Strange," Elijah admitted, adjusting the MIT sweatshirt he wore with quiet pride. "Good strange, though." They walked together toward the mathematics building, where a group of students and teachers waited in the largest classroom. "Nervous?" Dr. Wellington asked. "A little," Elijah confessed. "I've never given a talk before." "Just be yourself. That's more than enough." Inside, Elijah found a diverse group of about 30 students, the current scholarship recipients at Westfield, along with others who had expressed interest in mathematics. Among them sat Zoe Franklin, who waved enthusiastically, and Mr. James, who had taken a break from his custodial duties to attend. "Everyone," Dr. Wellington announced, "I'm honored to introduce Elijah Johnson, a former Westfield student who is now studying advanced mathematics at MIT. He's here to share his journey and answer your questions about pursuing mathematics at the university level." As Elijah took his place at the front of the room, he felt a momentary panic. Then he saw his parents slip in through the back door, his father no longer in his chauffeur's uniform but dressed in casual clothes, his mother beaming with pride. Something settled in him. 6 months ago, I was standing in an empty classroom not far from here, solving equations on a whiteboard because I couldn't sit comfortably in class, Elijah began, his voice growing stronger with each word. Today, I'm working alongside professors and graduate students on research that might someday help us understand the fundamental nature of the universe. For the next hour, Elijah shared his story, not just the triumph of his MIT acceptance, but the struggle and pain that had preceded it. He spoke candidly about Ms. Harrington's abuse, about feeling like an outsider, about finding sanctuary in room 307. "The most important thing I've learned," he concluded, "is that your circumstances don't define your potential. And sometimes, the very people who try to limit you end up being catalysts for your greatest opportunities." The Q&A session that followed was animated and heartfelt. Students asked about everything from the mathematics curriculum at MIT to how Elijah had maintained his confidence in the face of discrimination. One young girl, a 7th grade scholarship student, raised her hand timidly. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Even at MIT?" Elijah considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I've realized that belonging isn't about fitting into someone else's idea of who should be there. It's about bringing your unique perspective and contributions to the table." After the formal session ended, Elijah found himself surrounded by students eager for one-on-one conversation. Dr. Wellington observed from a distance, noting the ease with which Elijah connected with these students despite his natural introversion. He had a gift for explaining complex concepts in accessible terms, a born teacher as well as a mathematician. Later, Dr. Wellington walked the Johnson family to their car. "Elijah, what you did today will have lasting impact," he said. "Several students told me they've never considered pursuing advanced mathematics until hearing your story." "I just told the truth," Elijah replied modestly. "Sometimes that's the most powerful thing of all." Dr. Wellington turned to Marcus and Lisa. "You should be extraordinarily proud of your son." "We always have been," Lisa said, her arm around Elijah's shoulders. "Now others are finally seeing what we've always known." As they prepared to leave, Elijah asked to make one last stop. "I'd like to see room 307. The classroom was empty when they arrived, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows just as Elijah remembered. The whiteboards had been replaced with newer models, but the room's essence remained unchanged. "This room saved me," Elijah said quietly. "If I hadn't found this space, if Mr. James hadn't encouraged me to use it." "You'd have found another way," his father said confidently. "That's who you are, son." Dr. Wellington watched this moment of reflection with a profound sense of both regret and hope, regret for the system that had initially failed Elijah, hope for the changes now underway. As the Johnsons finally departed for Boston, Dr. Wellington returned to his office to find Mr. James waiting for him. "That boy is something special," the custodian said. "Yes, he is," Dr. Wellington agreed. "And we nearly lost him." "But you didn't," Mr. James pointed out. "You changed course when you saw the truth. Not everyone would have done that." "We still have a long way to go," Dr. Wellington sighed, gesturing toward a stack of complaints from parents resistant to the new policies. "Change never comes easy," Mr. James said philosophically. "But it's coming. I see it in the way students from different backgrounds are starting to interact, in the new teachers you've hired, in the questions being asked in classrooms." Dr. Wellington nodded thoughtfully. "Every revolution begins with a single catalyst. And yours was a 15-year-old boy solving equations in an empty classroom," Mr. James smiled. "Our catalyst," Dr. Wellington corrected. This is becoming everyone's revolution now. 1 year to the day after Dr. Wellington had discovered Elijah in room 307, Westfield Academy hosted the National Mathematics Olympiad, a prestigious competition that brought together the brightest young mathematical minds from across the country. The campus buzzed with excitement. Teams from elite private schools mingled with public school prodigies, all united by their passion for mathematics. Among the honored guests was Elijah Johnson, now a sophomore at MIT and already making waves in the mathematical community for his innovative approach to quantum physics theories. Dr. Wellington watched from the stage as Elijah entered the auditorium alongside his parents. No longer the timid boy who had shrunk from attention, Elijah moved with quiet confidence, stopping to encourage nervous competitors and chat with former teachers. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Wellington began once everyone was seated, "it is my honor to welcome you to Westfield Academy for the 45th Annual National Mathematics Olympiad. Today, we celebrate not just computational skill or memorized formulas, but the creative, problem-solving spirit that mathematics at its best represents." He paused, his gaze finding Elijah in the audience. "We are especially honored to have with us Elijah Johnson, a former Westfield student now studying at MIT, who will present the championship trophy. Elijah's journey reminds us that extraordinary talent can emerge from any background when given the right opportunity to flourish." The competition proceeded with intensity, teams of students tackling problems that would challenge professional mathematicians. Dr. Wellington observed with particular pride Westfield's own team, now notably diverse, including 3 students on full scholarships from neighborhoods like Elijah's. During a break between rounds, Dr. Wellington found Elijah in the mathematics building hallway, looking at the newly installed Wall of Excellence that featured photographs of outstanding alumni. "Your picture will be up there soon," Dr. Wellington said, joining him. Elijah smiled. "That would be something, wouldn't it? Especially here." He gestured to a section of the wall dedicated to the Elijah Johnson Scholarship recipients, already featuring 4 students in its inaugural year. "How are things at MIT?" Dr. Wellington asked. "Challenging. Exhilarating." Elijah's eyes lit up. "I'm working with Dr. Lewis on applying topological quantum field theory to black hole information paradoxes. We're hoping to publish next year." "I won't pretend to understand that," Dr. Wellington laughed, "but I'm incredibly proud of you." Elijah's expression grew more serious. "And Westfield? How are the changes holding up?" "Better than I expected, honestly. We've lost some families who couldn't adapt to the new culture, but applications are up overall. The scholarship program has tripled in size thanks to alumni donations. And the oversight committee has become a model that other schools are studying." "And Ms. Harrington?" Dr. Wellington sighed. "Teaching at a private academy in Connecticut. I couldn't prevent her from finding another position, but I did ensure that her disciplinary record followed her. At least her new employers are aware of her history." Elijah nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes I think about her. Not with anger anymore, just wondering if she ever realized what she almost destroyed." "People like that rarely do," Dr. Wellington replied. "But what matters is that we did." When the competition concluded that afternoon, it was Westfield's diverse team that took second place, their highest finish ever. And when Elijah presented the championship trophy to the winning team from a public magnet school in Detroit, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. At the reception afterward, Marcus and Lisa Johnson moved comfortably among university representatives and education officials, no longer outsiders but respected parents of one of mathematics' rising stars. "Your son has a remarkable future ahead of him," said the Dean of Sciences from Stanford University, who had come specifically to meet Elijah. "He always did," Lisa replied with quiet dignity. "The difference is now everyone else can see it too." As the event wound down, Dr. Wellington found himself standing with the Johnson family and Mr. James in the courtyard, watching the sunset paint Westfield's brick buildings in warm golden light. "I remember when you first drove through those gates in your father's car," Dr. Wellington said to Elijah. "How much has changed since then?" "Not just for me," Elijah observed, gesturing toward a group of scholarship students laughing together with their wealthier classmates. "For everyone." Mr. James smiled. One pebble creates ripples across the whole pond. Marcus put his arm around his son's shoulders. I always told you the world would know what you could do someday. I just didn't expect it to happen so soon. As they prepared to leave, the Johnsons back to Boston, Dr. Wellington to his office to prepare for another week of leading the transformed Westfield Academy, Elijah paused to look back at the school that had been both his trial and his catalyst. You know, he said thoughtfully, in mathematics, we learn that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But in life, I'm discovering that the most meaningful journeys often follow unexpected paths. Dr. Wellington nodded, thinking of his own unexpected journey from enforcer of tradition to champion of change. The best equations, Elijah continued with a smile, are the ones that surprise us with their elegance and truth. As the autumn leaves swirled around them, Dr. Wellington watched Elijah walk away, no longer a hidden genius, but a brilliant light illuminating paths for others to follow. In that moment, he knew that Westfield Academy had been forever changed, not by policies or initiatives, but by the courage of a boy who had refused to let adversity dim his extraordinary mind. Dear friend, this story reminds us that extraordinary talent exists in every community, waiting to be recognized and nurtured. Too often, brilliance is overlooked simply because it doesn't fit our preconceived notions of what success looks like or where it comes from. Let's commit to creating educational environments where all students can thrive regardless of their background. True excellence comes not from privilege but from opportunity, determination, and support. If this story moved you, please like and share to spread its message. Subscribe to our channel for more content that challenges stereotypes and celebrates the power of human potential to overcome adversity. Together, we can create a world where no brilliant mind goes undiscovered.